Yo, Jonathan here. As much as I would love to not talk about health, the reality is this is still very much a part of my day in and day out. There have been some ups, definitely some downs, and in particular, the last 3 or 4 months have been extraordinarily challenging to get through. I've wanted to make this video a handful of times and haven't been able to, but with it being the new year, I wanted to make this going over the state of everything, what's new, what I've learned, and then also, if anyone out there is going through something similar, whether it's some of it or all of it, this can be a resource as well. Probably the wildest thing that I've learned is that one of my eyes, most of the time it's my right, will shut off or suppress from my brain. Trying to explain that can be a little complicated because it's usually met with a look of confusion followed by the question, so does that mean it just like shuts off and goes black, or like how do you know? Before I jump in and break that down, if you're watching this and you're like, what the heck happened to you? The full video and story is linked up here and down below. But the condensed version is I've been in this 2-year battle with shingles that got into my right eye, caused some pretty significant scarring, nerve damage, including my 6th cranial nerve, which led to partial paralysis in one of my eye muscles, either a mini stroke at some point or enough neuroinflammation to cause a traumatic brain injury. And all that together has resulted in my eyes not working together, but then also not working with my brain, which has by far been the worst part. Just want to hop in and say thank you for the support, not only on the initial video, but everything else in between. I'll still see comments asking how you can support, and honestly, just watching this video through would mean the world to me. So these are red-green glasses, and they actually give us some pretty interesting insights and a look at the tech in our eyes and how they work. At their core, they're meant to get both your eyes to work together, and how they do that is quite cool. Fundamentally, what is happening is the glasses are splitting one singular image into 2 separate ones, and if everything is working as it should, your brain will then be able to fuse those back as one. Now where things get fun, take this chart of random letters, and if we throw the red filter over the camera, one half disappears. If we throw the green filter over, the other half disappears, so left eye, right eye, and then if your brain can merge them, everything together. So when we break down our visual systems, it's so much more complex than I think we truly realize. Even just thinking about operating a camera, that's challenging enough on its own. When in reality, if you're using a camera, you're actually only worrying about one lens and one image, whereas our brain is actually worrying about 2 lenses and 2 images. So what's happening is one of our eyes is laser point focused at a piece of text or an object, and then hopefully, if everything is running smoothly, our other eye is laser point focused at the exact same spot, at the exact same distance, and at the exact same angle. And if any one of those things is off, our brains are going to have a much harder time fusing those images as one. That then is just locked and static. But with reading, for example, then we add in tracking, and you're hoping for everything to stay focused and aligned while moving. And then we're hopefully doing that smooth enough where we could then play or hear those words back in our head and then process visually what that even means. The same thing then applies if you're moving. So if you're locked on an object, even just this little bit of sway right now, my eyes are trying to stay aligned and focused on that one singular subject. Conversely, if the object is moving, that then adds a challenge. So whether you're playing sports or just trying to go out and drive and traffic all around you is moving in different places, or just trying to watch TV, every time there's some sort of misalignment or one of your eyes is not focusing at the exact same distance as the other, that is creating an error. So just imagine the Windows error sound every time there's a problem, and that's incredibly taxing on your brain. So much, in fact, that that's actually a huge reason why one of your eyes would turn off or suppress from your brain, because I explained it before where if you imagined an image in Photoshop and if they're not lined up properly looking like one, just outside, not too extreme, is going to give you more of a blurriness, whereas if you get extreme cases, that's going to result in double, and your brain is like, nah, I don't want to deal with this, so rather than get taxed and punched repeatedly, I'm just going to turn it off altogether. So when I talked about eyes aligning at the exact same point, there's a couple ways that we do that. If we're reading up close on a phone or a book or a computer, our eyes are actually moving inward, and that's called convergence. Opposite of that, if we're looking at something further away or in the distance, our eyes are actually moving outwards, and that is called divergence. So initially, when I was kind of at the worst of everything, I couldn't converge or diverge. So everything just really messed me up. I couldn't process things up close, and then I could not process things far away. Since then, I would say I've made a ton of progress on convergence, and I think part of that also has to do with my eyes just kind of naturally resting more inwards as opposed to outwards. But I do still really struggle with divergence, and that makes sense because with that sixth nerve palsy, that actually controls my right eye's ability to move laterally outwards, which is something we need for divergence. So tossing these on, most of my work and the therapy and rehab at first was up close just to kind of make some progress. As I was starting to get better with that, I was quickly grounded because I realized once I tried to do anything at any kind of distance, maybe 5 feet and beyond, that's where I really ran into a ton of problems. I will never forget the first time in vision therapy, just watching something flicker off and turn off and disappear in front of me, almost like that photo in Back to the Future, except this was real life. So if I was about this distance, maybe 1 to 3 feet from the chart, everything would be really good. But as I started to take some steps back and rely more on divergence, that's when I would run into problems. Initially, at this distance, it was just off, and there was nothing that I could do to turn it back on. As I started to make some progress, you would see things either slowly fade off and turn off or flicker on and off. And what's happening here is there are neural pathways in our brain. They can get damaged, they can turn off, and in my case, what I'm trying to do is either rebuild new ones through neuroplasticity or turn those old ones that were having problems back on. And it sounds silly, but there are instances where you'll see the text start to flicker or fade or just turn off, and quite literally stomping your feet will get them to flicker back on. So we're trying to wake up that pathway in our brain. From there, as you start to make some progress, the goal is to be able to do these things subconsciously and just automatically. So once you can begin to train your brain to know that, hey, you're not supposed to shut off, you're supposed to stay on, that's the right thing to do, you can start to add in tasks. So where if I'm just trying to pay attention to catching this ball, keep everything on, sharp, and in focus and not turning off. And that way it becomes more of a background task as opposed to something I am just straining myself out, really taxing my brain. The other thing I will do in this case is you take a smaller chart, and that's going to allow you to work on two different things. One, obviously, make sure that both eyes are on, everything's sharp and working, but it's gonna allow me to work on both convergence close and then divergence far away. So accommodation is our eye's ability to focus on something near to far and then far to near. And ideally, we want to be able to do that really quickly because otherwise that's going to add a whole new layer of problems. So some of the scariest stuff that I've dealt with throughout all this is memory loss, confusion, disorientation, and even to this day, it still feels like I died, came back, and I'm trying to remember what things were like. I couldn't really put my finger on it, but things just felt less wide than I thought I remembered, almost to where maybe before everything happened, just imagine a 13mm lens, and then after everything, maybe a 24mm or 35mm lens where things just felt tighter, more compressed, and then if I wanted to see something wider, I had to physically step back. In general, from what I try to remember before, is things feel like tighter, or before they felt wider, like a camera lens, to where like sometimes it feels like I have to physically move back to scan things. I've since learned that the peripheral vision, or the field of view, in my right eye is about half of my left eye, which is definitely terrifying to see visualized. But on top of that, with my right eye turning off and suppressing, I was essentially seeing in monovision. Binocular vision is what we want, which results in stereopsis, or the ability to see in stereo, because without that, you then run into depth perception problems, you lose the ability to judge distance, and in my case, simple things like I would go to reach and grab something and completely miss. There's a great doctor out in Kentucky, Dr. Graby, and he equated trying to see or use our visual system when there's problems with your eyes, or more specifically your brain, like trying to learn the piano except the keys are turned off.
70 to 90% of any acquired brain injury will have an impact on the ambient visual system. And they go to the eye doctor and they check your focal visual system and they say you're fine. But yet your balance is off, you can't drive a car, you get dizzy, you get headaches, you're photosensitive. I love simple analogies. I said instead of vision skills, it's piano skills. I said, in real world, you're trying to learn to play piano when your keyboard's turned off.
So with vision therapy and neurorehabilitation, the goal is to hopefully turn those keys back on or rebuild those neural pathways. But from there, it is still a tremendous amount of work because if the keys are on, you still have to practice. And this is something that I have to do every single day. This is a vector ball, which is used a ton with traumatic brain injuries and recovery in sports. And the idea here is upon impact, it will flash a random color, red, green, or blue. The objective is if it's red, you catch it with your right hand. If it's blue, you catch it with both hands. And if it's green, you catch it with your left hand. This is going to help with reaction times and processing and physically tracking the ball with your eyes from the wall to your hand. And with vision therapy and the neurorehabilitation, it's really important to do bilateral movements. So by having to quickly react and catching with either your left or your right, that's going to improve things there as well. This is a tranaglyph, and it's going to work with those red-green glasses to isolate each image per eye. And then from there, it's going to allow you to work on both divergence and convergence, but you're going to take each image and quite literally fuse them together with your brain like Magneto. It really is quite fascinating how complex our visual system, our body, our brains all are, and things that used to just be automatic that you never really thought about. When you lose those, it definitely adds perspective. This can also be done with polarized glasses, and you can see how beat to death this one is using this every single day. This is a Brock string, which looks a little underwhelming, but it's actually an incredibly powerful tool for recovery. It's going to improve your accommodation and the ability to focus on near to mid to far, but then also it's going to do some optical tricks and let you know if both eyes are turned on with your brain. These are flippers, so imagine reading glasses where you have a +1 or a +2. This is both plus and minus. So when you quickly flip back and forth between +2 or -2, that's going to force you to work on your eye muscles and strengthen those, which is super important for accommodation. I do also now have to wear scleral lenses, which are hard contact lenses that vault over your sclera, hence the name. The entire process is pretty wild, where they will actually take a 3D mold of your eye so they can then print these out. They effectively act like an artificial cornea to give you a smooth, even surface and allow light to pass through, which then helps with your vision. At some point soon, I want to do a dedicated video on these just because there is so much tech packed inside. Yes, this will correct for things like astigmatism. It'll help with scarring, keratoconus, dry eye. But probably the coolest part about this is similar to noise canceling headphones, where those will cross cancel out frequencies you don't want. This will cross cancel out higher order aberrations. So if you have things like streaks and halos and starbursts, it's going to eliminate those, which is wild. More people need to know about them. They're life-changing. I would be lost without them. And again, shout out to Dr. Schramm, who honestly, I would say is one of the best scleral lens doctors on the planet. Also, shout out to the vision therapy team, Nikki, Corey, Peyton, Izzy, Dr. Chen, Dr. Lam. I now know probably more about eyes and vision than I ever thought I would. And then of course, Dr. Hafer over at Well Connected, because ultimately that is what got me from point A to point B. And then I wouldn't have even ever known that I had convergence problems if it were not for her neurological test. So I previously broke everything down kind of like a camera system, where my eye and the scarring is similar to the glass on a camera lens. Then the nerves and the muscles would be similar to the focus motor. And finally, my brain would be equal to the processor. So while the scleral lenses do fix one of the problems, it doesn't fix the other two. And getting my eyes to work together and then also to work with my brain, it's a completely different story and can be extremely taxing. Sometimes I'll think to myself, man, if it was just the scarring, I'd be really good right now. Or even if it were just the scarring and just the vision therapy and just the neurorehabilitation that I had to deal with, I would be really good right now. But the other giant factor that just is always looming is shingles itself. It is a virus that lives in your nerves, and the problem is it can come back again and again. So in my case, it initially all stemmed back in 2022. It came back in 2023, where it did the bulk of the damage. And then just a couple months ago in September, it flared up again to where one morning I woke up and it looked like someone just punched me in the face. I think in general, when you think of shingles, you think of something that impacts the skin or something that is external. But I've learned in my case, it actually will attack my nerves from the inside.
That's a ganglia in the brain, like a root of the nerves, all these nerves. You see those blacks are the nerves.
Okay.
And those goes in the different location. So those herpes shingles virus, they live in here, they live here.
Gotcha.
Whenever you have a low immunity or stress or anything, can cause those viruses to travel through the nerves,
Gotcha.
come out on your skin, on your lips, and that's the shingles. It's the
Gotcha.
shingles virus.
So before it went the
Yeah,
other
before
way.
last time it went through this way, and it went to your eyes and everything.
Gotcha.
This time it came down here and it's lower nerves and everything,
Gotcha.
mandibular nerves.
But that
So
explains like some of the face
some
pain.
of the face pain and everything, because viruses came from here all the way down. So it only,
Oh, that's
only
looks like a direct like
yes,
map where it
map
hurts.
where it hurts. Yeah, and that's what caused inflammation on its way. Viruses caused inflammation.
Gotcha.
That's why you're feeling a little bit heaviness and soreness in that area.
Post-herpetic neuralgia is probably one of the most grueling, awful side effects of shingles, because the inflammation and damage to the nerves, that's something that could last months, years, and sometimes never go away. Something that I'm dealing with right now, just trying to record this video, is occipital neuralgia. And the way I would describe that is if someone took a screwdriver that was on fire and stuck it in the back of your skull. That nerve pain then travels down your neck into your trap and then back up around your ear and to the inside of your eye, to where it feels like someone is pulling on your eye from the inside. The pain I would describe as vomit inducing, to where it just hits you to your core and you're almost shaking. And while that's one thing, because there is so much sensitivity and inflammation and pain around your neck and eyes and vestibular system, that then comes with a whole host of other problems like dizziness and balance problems. One of the things that I think I'm most desperate for right now is just to have a day that's a normal day where I don't have to think about it, because I feel like I haven't had one of those in over 2 years. So just imagine the worst cold, the worst headache, the worst pain, the worst brain fog that never fully ever goes away, and you're dealing with that for 2 years. I mentioned before I was really thankful to have a foot out the door of hell, but that other foot was still very much still in that door. And I think the last few months especially, it felt like that was trying to really pull me back. So I've been trying to do everything I can to not get there. The other catch-22 of the vision therapy and making progress and getting my eyes to turn on more and more is that also kind of leads to a different set of problems where my eyes and my brain start to learn what is correct, and then they're desperately trying to work to get to that point. So that in itself can really wear you down. The amount of strain and stress and fatigue that will put on your eyes and neck by itself is a ton. But then you factor in the nerve pain and the aftermath of shingles, and that is kind of the ultimate recipe for disaster. So there'll be times where I just feel my brain and my nervous system shut down because I'm just so wiped. Bandwidth is probably the word I would use to really kind of visualize it, to where some days it just feels like I have none, to where I can look at my phone or I can get a text or someone could be talking to me and it just doesn't make sense. Sometimes sound or loud environments can shut me down, or going into a visually very busy place like a grocery store. You have then things like fluorescent lighting that makes things worse, and it's just really kind of the worst combo you can imagine. So in a normal instance, if everything was functioning as it should, just picture a cup where you're pouring water into it. Now in my case, sometimes it feels like my cup was just chopped 9/10 off and the water is pouring and pouring and pouring, and then because of that, I'm not able to absorb the information, to take it in, and it just keeps wiping me down and shutting me down. The other really brutal thing with shingles, especially if you're dealing with it on your face or in your eyes, what it can do to you cognitively. In my case, my brain has been impacted, but there were studies showing that the shingles vaccine has been shown to reduce Alzheimer's and dementia. And I think the more that we look at it, it's actually just what shingles itself will do to your brain. Pretty much from October until just about a couple weeks ago, I felt like I was just mentally, cognitively zapped. Like it was really scary and dark. Being in that state, it really messes with you and with time, because again, you're not absorbing things, you're not absorbing memories or creating memories. So time, it just really feels like it just disappears. I've really had to dial in every aspect of my life, not just the vision therapy or the neurorehabilitation, which is a full-time job in itself, but then pay attention to posture, how I sleep, diet, supplements, like it all really matters. What I've found to be really helpful supplement-wise, I've broken it down into 2 categories. So you have immune system and antiviral, and then brain and cognitive function. Obviously, please consult your doctor before taking anything, but what's worked well for me on the immune antiviral side is vitamin C, zinc, L-lysine, monolaurin, and then olive leaf extract. And I would say since I've gone really hard on that the last 3 or 4 weeks, that's made a pretty big difference. Then on the cognitive side of things, taurine, lion's mane, which can also help with nerves, creatine, matcha as my source of caffeine if I get that in for the day, magnesium L-threonate, which will actually cross the blood-brain barrier, and then lithium in mineral form. It can absolutely be a really exhausting routine to do day in and day out, especially sometimes when you feel like you're stuck or not making progress. But at the end of the day, I know it's all made a really big difference. The other thing that has helped is red light therapy, which is something I definitely want to cover in the future as well, because there's so much science and tech packed behind that. Essentially what's happening is it's using specific wavelengths of light to not only penetrate your skin, your tissue, but all the way down to your mitochondria. And what happens there is that then stimulates healing and reduces inflammation. This little handheld guy right here will do both red and near infrared light at all of the most beneficial wavelengths. And on top of that, it'll also do pulse lighting, which I was interested in because that has been shown to regenerate nerves. So while I'm still very much struggling, I am super determined to continue to get better. The end of 2024 was not how I wanted things to go or not how I saw things going, but on top of my body and mind just physically shutting down, I also had to do everything in my power to not get back to square one. It has been hard, and just sitting here trying to talk through this video, feeling lightheaded, feeling the pain, things that were once simple that I could do fairly easily and quickly, they just take so much longer now. The other thing that I want to address is it was really hard to ask for help financially, and I think part of the tough aspect of that is it did tremendously well, but that also went tremendously fast. So I would get comments like, oh, like you're great, amazing now because that did so well. You got to be completely good. And unfortunately, that's trying to come back from a year of not working, a year of medical bills, and that has come and gone. So I think at this point, while I'm so grateful and so thankful, you know, to hear those comments of like, you got to be good, that was also a little bit hard. But I'm trying to get to the point now where that got me from point A to point B, and I'm trying to rely on myself to get through the work and get to the next step. Like I said before, the simplest and easiest way to support me right now is just to watch these videos. If you want to become a channel member or check out Patreon, I'll have that link below. But ultimately, again, just watching these videos really does mean a lot. I recently dropped a video with Lenovo with a very special guest that's near and dear to my heart if you guys want to check that out. I am trying to play catch up on everything that didn't happen in 2024. So if you do see a couple sponsored videos, again, I'm always weary of those and try to balance things, but as of now, as I'm catching up, if you guys just make sure to watch those, and that would mean everything. I do also want to give a huge thank you to Denago EV, who reached out immediately when everything happened last year. They sent out one of their EV carts, which is just ridiculously awesome. I was supposed to do something with that around the iPhone launch, shot a few things, and then my body just completely fell apart. So I got a chance to talk to Zoe and the CEO directly, and just the understanding and patience and just kind of sitting there and talking to me and saying, take your time, just get better, focus on that, and then we'll be here when you're ready, meant the world to me. So definitely check them out, linked below, and look forward to some sort of ridiculous coverage on that very shortly. It is really awesome. And then again, if there are any other brands out there that have valued my work over the years and want to work together, let's get in touch. This has been definitely a journey and a process, but I am committed and determined to get there and want to make some cool things along the way. So email, contact, everything you guys need to recap this video is linked in the description. I'll post a playlist of everything that I'm working on right now, and I will catch you guys later.